to be empowered, and to witness something that will stay with you long after the last speaker leaves the stage. The energy in this room is electric, and the stories you're about to hear will ignite something inside you. Tonight, we stand together, empowered, united, unstoppable. Let's make every moment unforgettable.
Hello, everyone. How are you tonight? Great. I'm Julie Staley. I am your MC for this evening, and we are so glad to have you all here for the She Said project. That's what She Said Springfield. This is our first in Springfield. Let's give a round of applause for that. We have some amazing, amazing stories tonight, and I know that everyone's going to resonate with something that they will hear, and you'll be able to take away something that will really be something for you to reflect on. And something that will help you grow as a person. And you will have a chance after the show to talk to everyone. We'll be meeting outside in the gallery, and we're looking forward to those conversations and continuing those conversations after tonight. We want to thank, of course, the Children's Advocacy Centers of Illinois for bringing this amazing event here. Let's give them a round of applause. It's so wonderful to be able to support an organization like that because of the influence that they have in helping children in our state. There are so many cases that they deal with, things that we don't understand, that we don't know about. For instance, today there are going to be 222 reports of abuse in Illinois. 222 just in Illinois. And 1 in 10 children will be sexually abused before their 18th birthday. That's 293,000 children in Illinois. These are situations that can only be taken care of by people who have special values, people who are trained in what they do, and that's what Children's Advocacy Centers of Illinois do. And they are helping those who don't have that voice. They're helping them find their voice. And that's what tonight is about, finding that voice, listening to stories, and hearing what people have to say about their lives and what has impacted them. So you may be asking also, what's the story of That's What She Said? This is in so many cities now, so it's a very, very exciting movement. So one evening on a simple backyard patio, 3 friends were sitting together, watching their daughters play and dreaming about the world that they wanted to create. And not just for their own girls, but for all daughters. They talked about the stories that women carry, the experiences that shape us, and the moments that define us. They wondered, what if we created a space where these stories could be shared? So much we need this in the world. What if we built a platform where women's voices weren't just heard, but celebrated? And just like that, That's What She Said was born. And here we are tonight in Springfield. So what started as a single live storytelling event quickly became something much bigger. It became a movement, a place where everyday women could step into the spotlight, share their extraordinary experiences, a stage where women live boldly, truly, fearlessly, and a space where we laugh, and we laugh until our sides ache, and we cry until our hearts feel a little bit lighter, and we walk away knowing that we are never, ever alone. And I hope you'll have those feelings tonight. The She Said project didn't stop at one night, though, in one city. As you all know, it grew. It grew into a blog, a podcast, virtual shows that connect women from across the country, and it expanded beyond its home in Champaign, Urbana. Yeah, filling theaters in Bloomington, Indianapolis, St. Louis, Quad Cities, and beyond. And I know there are people from some of those places here, so we're so glad to have all of you here. And in 2024 alone, we stood on 10 stages in 10 different communities. And that's just the beginning. So that's what's to celebrate. This is only the beginning. It's had such a wonderful movement. And these stories, why these stories? Because they do matter. They lift us, they inspire us, and they remind us of the fire that's within. And that's what She Said it's more than a show. It's a movement of women supporting women, of communities coming together, of voices that refuse to be silenced. And that's what that's about. It's stories creating a space for someone to say, me too, and to know they are not alone. It's stories to celebrate and be in awe of the women who have lived them. So tonight, we're honored to be here to thank our presenting sponsor, Children's Advocacy Centers of Illinois. They provide a safe place for children who've experienced sexual abuse or severe physical abuse to tell their story and receive the support and the resources that they and their families need to begin to heal and move forward toward a brighter future. And the CACI's mission is to support and sustain the 41 local children's advocacy centers throughout the state of Illinois in multiple ways. And you'll learn more about CACI later tonight, as we will be presented with ways to connect with them after the show is over. So much, much more to come about that. So we want you now to open your hearts, listen, lean in, and get loud and make some noise for your 2025 That's What She Said Springfield inaugural cast. Welcome, ladies.
Hey, whoever that was.
You already know.
It's Michael Phelon, my husband. Welcome, and thank you for being here. I've spent my entire life really in love with words. I've spent my entire career really working on words and helping people pick the right words for the right moment. I've always felt like people who could do that, pick the right word for the right context and the right moment, they're like magicians. They're prophets, they're presidents, they're poets. They're the most powerful people we know. That's how powerful words are. And I have always had that. Even when I was a young girl, I loved everything about language arts and reading, any word puzzle, any basic fill in the blank, anything that was about words in context was something that always motivated me. I also really loved personal storytelling, and I also was pretty good at public speaking, even as a kid. I just didn't always know exactly about the right order and the right time to say things. I had the gift of gab, but not much discernment at that point. I actually remember my very first report card. Back in those days, they would put your grades on this white piece of cardstock, and they would fold it in half and put it in a manila envelope, and they would trust you to walk it home to your parents, to have them sign it, and then you bring it back. I remember that first day report card for a very specific reason. I was terrified on that walk home because I knew that I had gotten all A's in all of my core subjects, but there was a big fat C on that report card. I'm actually still nervous talking about it. The C was for conduct. And I, even in first grade, knew exactly what the teacher's note next to that C said. And it said, Keisha talks too much. So I, petrified, walked home all the way down Gift Avenue, gave that report card, trembling to my mom. And she looked at that report card, she saw all those A's, she was incredibly proud. She didn't even see the C, she didn't comment on it. And I think that's because she already knew, right? She knew. I am a talker, always have been, always will be, and that wasn't something that she was gonna punish me for. So that's always been a part of who I am, even as a child. I didn't always know what I wanted to be when I grew up. I didn't. But I did know that the through line and the things that I was interested in was the ability to communicate well. And so I thought about being a public official, I thought about being a lawyer, I thought about being a minister. But instead I chose to focus on what really was the through line, and that was communication. Communication that moves people to action, communication that moves people to sometimes just clarity for the moment. So I didn't become a lawyer, minister, or politician. I became a communication strategist. And I have spent my entire life really helping people to tell their own stories. Helping them to shape their narratives, to help them lead, helping them to shape narratives, sometimes help them win. And that's really ironic. I spent my entire life helping people do storytelling. It's what I do. And yet, I truly have always struggled my entire life to tell my own. And that is a bit ironic for someone like me, but let me just tell you that part of it is just the nature of my work. I'm a strategist, I'm behind the scenes, right? I'm not usually the subject, I'm not usually the point of the story. So that is kind of a professional kind of deference that I provided for myself. The other reason is really much more personal for me. As a survivor of childhood sexual abuse, I spent years learning how to lock up my story, to keep my story safe, to keep myself safe, and trying to unlearn that has been my entire life's journey. It's never been about the talking. We've already established I can do that. I've always done that, to my detriment. But it is the idea of centering my own personal story that has always terrified me. So let me tell you about my journey of anxiety getting ready for tonight. So when Stacey contacted me, I immediately knew I was gonna do this. I was all in, yes, the moment Kim reached out, because I believe in CACI and what they do for kids that were like me, and that's important. But I also thought I was saying yes to something different. I thought this was a panel discussion. I thought this was gonna be like a panel of ladies sipping cocktails and being cute and clever, and they said there was a moderator. So I'm thinking like it's gonna be like The View, right? It's gonna be like Q&A, and I can just be clever and cute, and then we're done, and then we raise money, and that's great. And then someone said, no, it's a monologue. Okay, so that is when the low-level anxiety hum started, right? Monologue, because that's very, very different. And so I thought, wait, that can't be right. No, it's a panel discussion. They said Julie Staley was going to be the moderator. That can't be right. Because I already said yes, also. And so I happened to be at an event. I was actually at Liz's house, and I knew she was also doing this. And I just kind of snooped around a little bit for more detail about what tonight was, and I didn't get the answers I wanted. Someone said, yeah, no, it's a monologue. It's gonna be great, you're gonna be great. It's like the vagina monologues. Also, no, I'm out, right? It's not worth it. I can write a check to CACI, right? That's all I need to do, right? I'm not getting up to talk about that. So, it didn't take long for me to get clarity about what the purpose was tonight, but I will tell you, it was no less terrifying for me. And it's terrifying for all of us. It's terrifying for all of us for very, very different reasons. And I just want to say that, one of the things that you need to know about me is it's not talking, it's the centering of the story. So I am standing in my truth and getting over my anxiety by being here with you today and sharing this. For survivors of abuse, which statistics say, by the way, is 1 in 4 of us in this room. I think it's actually higher. And we're not talking about men, by the way, with that statistic usually. I think it's much higher. For survivors, this is a well-founded fear, storytelling. There are deep and really complex reasons why personal storytelling, even if it's not directly related to your trauma, can be really, really difficult for some of us. Here's just a few. The first is difficulty with trust and vulnerability. Often, abuse shatters your ability to trust. It makes personal storytelling really hard. It makes opening up really hard. And these are things that we've had to learn to protect ourselves and to keep ourselves shielded. And so sometimes vulnerability feels unsafe. In fact, sometimes vulnerability is unsafe. And so we really live in kind of protected zones to make sure that we continue to operate in safety. A second is fear of being dismissed or invalidated. Survivors, many of them aren't believed. And for some of them that are believed, their stories are minimized or ignored, or there's no accountability and there's no follow through. And so it makes it really feel like it's not worth sharing, right? The third is fear of judgment and shame, even when stories aren't directly about abuse. Understand that lots of abuse victims really deal with shame on a regular basis and on a regular part of their life. Society has statistically and normalized stigmatizing people who are suffering from abuse, and we know that. And we're incredibly nervous about the ways that we are perceived because of the ways that society has stigmatized people who have gone through abuse. All of these are true for me. I've navigated every single one of these, but what's really capturing my imagination now, what's really settling in on me now, is how trauma has this impact. Trauma has this ability to have a ripple effect on all of my storytelling, even the stories that are not about my trauma. See, choosing to lock away parts of my story affects my ability to show up fully in the world. It's like trying to write a book, but redacting whole chapters. You cannot selectively lock away one part without changing how the rest unfolds. It's like what Brené Brown says about emotions. You cannot selectively numb your emotions. You want to numb what's painful, but you cannot do that without also numbing what is joyful. I think personal storytelling can be very much the same. I want to get over this anxiety. I'm trying to get over this anxiety. I'm trying to do it right now. And it's been my life's journey. But I want to tell you one thing that's making it easier for me tonight, one thing that's made it easier for me in the last several years. And that is the understanding that I'm writing a story, I'm sharing a story, not for me, but for my kids. While preparing for tonight, I remembered the wisdom of a dear friend of mine. She wrote her own story, biography, and she met with me and she's like, I just have a sense that you're supposed to do this. No, I'm not. She said, no, you need to do this. And I asked why, and she said, do it for your kids. They see a part of you now, and that might be all they're interested in, but at some point, they're really gonna have this desire to see the whole picture of who their mom is. And that changed the calculation for me, right? It wasn't about holding back to protect myself, it's about making sure I show up for my kids in the most full way. So while preparing for tonight, I remembered that wisdom, and I decided that I wanted to speak with my kids. So I talked to both of them, they're both here. And I talked to my son, and I said, I want to share these hard things. How do you feel about it? Is there anything you want me to keep in mind? And he said, it's your story. Just share what you want to share. But can I read it first? And then I talked to my daughter, and I had a slightly different conversation with her because I was trying to get out of talking about the thing I'm talking about today. I gave her some options of other things that I could talk about, and I put this one last. I said, one of the options is talking about how hard it is to share my story as a survivor. And she said, Mom, you have to talk about that one. And she said that with perfect confidence and perfect clarity. You see, my kids are living my life with me, they're sharing my life with me, and that has been what is driving me to be able to do this tonight. It's taken 40 years and a lot of healing, and a lot of therapy, and a lot of trauma-informed support to get me where I am today, to understand who I am today. But something about preparing for tonight, something about talking to my kids about it, caused something to settle really deep inside of me. Something that I could have always known, but I really need to understand it for this season of my life. And that is really simple. It's a truth that I just want to say a couple of times. And that is that my trauma is not my story. spending all of this time trying to lock away parts of who I am really diminishes who I am. My trauma isn't my story. My kids know me. They see me. They know the story that I'm writing. They're living it with me. They're sharing it with me. And while they maybe touch my trauma responses and my reactions, I pray that they are so much more impacted by my healing, by my resilience, by my strength, and by the healing that I've been willing to walk out in front of them. Here's the simple truth. The tough chapters don't tell the whole story. So I won't let them fully define me. You see, I'll say it again, my trauma is not my story, and your trauma is not your story. I no longer have to let the hard chapters define who I am or who I become. I don't have to let anxiety of personal storytelling prevent me from showing up in honest and authentic ways. So for those of you who know me and are hearing this part of my story for the first time, yes, I am a victim of childhood sexual abuse, but it's not my whole story. My life with my husband and my kids, my empathy, my faith, my open-heartedness, that's my story. That's the life that I'm writing, and that's the life that I want to share. And that truth, that confidence is what I'm using to reframe storytelling for myself, for my children, and for anyone here who's learning how to speak up and tell your own story in your own terms. Thank you.
Very nicely done. Good evening, fabulous audience. You all look great out there. So for my story tonight, I'm going to share with you 3 milestones that required me to overcome adversity in my life. Each milestone I share will be different, but the coping skills I use to overcome them will be the same. For me, it has always come down to resilience, that ability to overcome adversity, that will to keep going, that courage to move forward. My life, much like yours, I'm sure, is filled with resilience. When adversity has come, and it always does, my ability to say with conviction, I can do this, has always been my salvation. So come with me on a journey as I share my first milestone. It was 1969. I was 11 years old, and it was the summer before I started 8th grade. My grandparents took me on a fabulous trip to San Francisco. We stayed at the new Del Webb townhouse, which was legendary at the time. When we got to the hotel, my grandmother and I got on the elevator. As the elevator began to move, my grandmother pretended not to know me, and she turned to a guest that was already on the elevator, and she said, "Don't you think this little girl is too damn fat?" Yeah, that's what I said. The lady enthusiastically agreed with Granny. So of course, when the elevator stopped, I got off, I burst into tears, and ran to the room. Now I must tell you, to be clear, Granny and the lady were right. I was 4'11", and I weighed north of 190 pounds. I shopped for my clothes at Sears and Roebuck's because they had a special band called Chubbies. That's nice marketing, don't you think? We got to the room, and my grandmother looked at me and she said, "Desi, quite frankly, I did that to make a point. I'm going to help you lose this weight before you start high school, and it will change your life." And she said, "We can do this." And we did. She bought me a little book for 25 cents at the grocery store that listed the calorie content of countless foods. And she taught me the simple principle of calories in, calories out. And by the time I started high school, I lost over 80 pounds. So that was the first time I learned, when faced with adversity and being scared and not sure which way to go, I said to myself, I can do this. My second milestone occurred in 1985. I was getting a divorce from my starter marriage. I had one of those. Yeah, we've all been there, or some of us have. The counselor I was seeing at the time said, you might lose 3 things during this process of divorce. The first thing she said is, you might lose friends, because friends can choose sides sometimes. Then she said, you will lose money, because your assets will be divided. Scary. But the most alarming thing she said was that you could lose some self-confidence, because divorce can feel like a failure. Well, guess what? She was right. And I hit a very low point in my life. And it often happens when we're not feeling our best self, we make some bad choices. And I chose the wrong guy. I entered into a relationship with a man who was mentally and physically abusive, and I stayed in that relationship for 3 years. And I remember thinking, I am a professional woman. This can't be me. I would never let this happen. I've heard about these things, but not me. And yet I was there tolerating this bad behavior day in and day out. Well, it all came to a head when the bad boy and I planned a trip to Arizona. We had a huge fight the night before we were supposed to travel. Not unusual for that relationship. And he walked out. Well, the next morning, I thought about this, and I thought, I'm going to go to Arizona. But the problem was, we had purchased companion tickets on TWA Airlines. And in those days, companion tickets were sold at a deep discount, but the trick was, you had to fly with the person you bought the ticket with. Well, I put on my best self, and I went to that airport anyway. And I went to the gate agent, I handed him my ticket, and he said, where's your companion? And I said, things didn't work out. I can't travel with him. And then the gate agent looked at me, and as if on cue, the bad boy made an appearance and caused a scene at the gate. Can you imagine that happening today? Lord. But anyway, the gate agent looked at both of us, and he said, today, young lady, you are flying without your companion. And he let me on the plane. And you know what I said? I said, I can do this. Well, things got better for me. I got out of that toxic relationship, yay, regained my confidence, my career took off, and I married the right guy.
All right.
Things were going very, very well for me. I had a wonderful relationship with my husband. We are in our 24th year of marriage. And I'll share my final milestone with you tonight. It was January 6th of 2020. My life took an unexpected turn. I was making my egg white frittata in the kitchen, as I do every morning, and I heard my husband call my name from his office, and it didn't sound right. So I went to the office door, and I saw that he had fallen backwards out of his chair, and he was having a seizure. I called 911. The ambulance came and took him to Memorial Hospital. We were there less than an hour, and the doctors told us that he had stage 4 lung cancer that had metastasized to his brain. We were in total shock. He had had absolutely no symptoms at all. So the next step, the next several weeks, was about getting a plan for treatment. The doctors, of course, first treated the brain, very serious, the brain tumor. They felt pretty good that that was successful, and then they made the plan for chemotherapy. And we felt great going into it, because, you know, there had been no symptoms, so we're just in shock that this is even happening. So this is going to be great, chemotherapy. We got this. We can do this, right? Well, he had his first chemotherapy treatment on February 26th, and he was dead by March 10th. The doctors got it wrong. The combination of chemicals they used for chemotherapy killed all of his white blood cells. And he died quite quickly. So as I was planning the celebration of life and thinking about the eulogy I wanted to honor this my husband of 24 years, I said to myself, how can I do this? I really didn't have the strength. I thought I'm not prepared for this. But timing is a very interesting thing. If you remember what was happening in March of 2020, oh yeah, the beginning of COVID, right? So although my world was changed and I was upside down and confused and lacked direction, the world had changed and everybody was confused and without direction. And believe it or not, that gave me comfort. I was able to get through that and plan the celebration of life that I had on March 15th. And if you remember, the world closed on March 16th, 2020. So being able to have that celebration of life gave me the strength to start my new journey as a widow. I will tell you, when you tell people you're a widow, it makes them uncomfortable. And they really don't know what to say or what to act. I wish I could see your faces because you're probably going, ooh, what's the W word? So what I've found is people like to give you advice. They tell you things like, get a cat. Sell your house. Move your wedding rings to the other hand. Find love again. Move to a new city. Find a support group. I know when people say those things to you, it is with all good intent. But I also knew I had to get through it in my own way. And I said to myself, you have to do this. The most common thing I get as a widow is, I can't imagine what it must be like. And I always tell people the same thing. Don't waste 1 minute imagining that loss. Spend the time loving those around you and cherish that time. Because, yay, love is nurturing that love will give you the strength when you need it the most. So, I will end my story the way I started it. When I got the call from That's What She Said, and they asked me to be part of this amazing event, I said, I can do this. Thank you.
Hi there. Normally, I should be at work right now, but I'm here with you guys. So, I'm Stacey Skrysak. Most people know me from the news, and I've been doing it for a whole long time. You've noticed me with we call it the anchor helmet. I've got all the hairs in place today, the makeup on, and you see the smiling face with very serious, we know what to do. We can separate ourselves from the news and real life. But I think that we all, as you've seen already on the stage, we all have our own struggles that people don't see. And for me, that struggle is grief, and a lot of it, for over a decade now. So that's my story, and I hope that I can help some of you. When I was growing up in San Diego, it was a beautiful town. Can't live there because I can't afford to live there now. Love it here. It was a picture-perfect life. I grew up with a wonderful family. I lived by the beach with palm trees, and the only thing missing was that white picket fence. And that's kind of how life went for me. It just worked. Even when it didn't work, it always seemed like things were going to work out. I moved to the middle of nowhere, Podunk, Nebraska, Scottsbluff, Nebraska, a tiny little dot on the map, and met my husband there in my first job, and that was over 20 years ago. And we moved all over the country to, kind of for my job. And that landed us here in Springfield. And I remember when we first moved here, everyone said, oh yeah, you're only gonna be here a couple of years. I think Dawn, my co-anchors in the crowd, who told me the same thing. So you say, you're gonna, yeah, we'll see. And here we are 13 years later, my husband and I are married with kids in suburbia, loving it. When we moved here, our plan, the next step, as I was gonna find my soulmate, we were gonna have kids and have the life we always wanted. But as so many couples find out, it doesn't always work that way. But for me, things always seem to work out. We dealt with infertility for years. And it wasn't until 2013 that we realized that really our only shot, because of my health, would be IVF. So we went through IVF, and once again had that hope. And because nothing ever is normal with me, it was a 2 to 5% chance, but we ended up pregnant with triplets. 2 identical girls and a boy. And I remember being on the news and announcing it and kind of being nervous, going, please say prayers for us, because we know that this is going to be a difficult pregnancy. So please, we'll take all of the prayers. But I still had that hope, and I still thought everything works out. At 18 weeks gestation, we almost lost the children. I started at just a doctor's appointment and ended up in emergency surgery and on bed rest for months after that. But we still had that hope. And the doctors were surprised, knowing, do you really understand what's going on? And I went, yeah, we know, things work out for us. At 20 weeks gestation, which is just halfway through a pregnancy, my water broke. I was on bed rest, and we still had that hope. We thought, you know what, things just work out. And unfortunately, 2 weeks later, at 22 weeks gestation, I went into labor. 17 weeks premature. And for people that aren't familiar, viability is not even really at that edge. It's kind of a gray area, 22 weeks. You want to get to 23, 24. Many hospitals won't even give a mother or babies a chance at that gestation. But we were prepared. The neonatal intensive care unit was ready for us at St. John's, and they delivered my children. On June 23rd, at 4:58 a.m., our first daughter, Abigail, was born. And less than 2 hours later, she died in our arms. And we laid there thinking, wow, life is not going as planned. And we just kind of laid there all day going, okay, when's the other shoe gonna drop? 17 hours later, Abby's identical sister, Peyton, was born, and her son, Parker, were born. I was very sick, went into septic shock, and was rushed off to the operating room where they saved my life. I woke up hours later in the ICU, not even realizing that I had 2 children that were 1 pound each and translucent and barely alive in the NICU. And that started our journey of grief, but also trying to balance it out. Exactly a week after I delivered the triplets, we were released from the hospital. It happened to be the day that I got to hold our lone survivor, Peyton. I got to hold her for the first time. And as we left the hospital for the first time in months for me, we had to go straight to the funeral home. And we had to sit and pick out an urn and identify our daughter. And we sat there in our 30s thinking, we're kids, this is not right. You know, children are supposed to outlive their parents, not the other way around. We held a small service because this was all so sudden. Our family had flown in. And that day, my parents flew back to San Diego, my in-laws flew back to Nebraska, and the next day my husband went back to work. And I was left at home trying to recover and also survive and just figure out how to live and how to stay strong for 2 little babies. 55 days after we delivered our triplets, we were in the same boat. On August 16th at 6:12 p.m., our son Parker died in our arms. In less than 2 months, we had lost 2 of our children. And once again, we had to go straight to the funeral home. We had to identify our son. We had to pick out that same little urn with just different initials, and we held a service. This time around, we had a few more friends that actually got to meet him in the NICU and get to know him. And right there, that day, my parents moved back to San Diego, and my in-laws back to Nebraska, and a day later, my husband went back to work. And there I was, now with 1 baby, hoping for a miracle that maybe she's gonna survive, and starting the shock of everything wearing off, and the grief just consuming me, and trying to hold it together. And not understanding that why I'm so emotional, why is my husband not? Why is he at work? Why is he at the gym? Why is he living life? Yet he was at the NICU every single morning at 6 a.m. before work. Grief changes a person, and it comes comes in all shapes and sizes. And in those early days when I couldn't sleep and I would be sobbing silently next to my husband as he slept, I would talk to my therapist and I said, when is this going to get easier? When will I get over this? And she just looked at me and said, you're never going to get over the loss of a child. You're not going to get over that grief. Grief sticks with you, but it will change over time, and you will learn how to survive. And the same goes for my father. Right after he left the second time, I received an email. He's much like my husband, who's very stoic and doesn't show emotion. I've seen him cry maybe 5 times in my life. I received a letter, and in it said, I am so thankful that you are still with us. I keep thinking of how much you remind me of my mother. This is the highest compliment I could give anyone. And I remember just crying and just realizing it and sinking in that, you know what? That's his way of grieving too. He and my mother, almost lost their daughter and their 2 grandchildren. We all grieve differently. Time went on. Our lone survivor is amazing. I'm sure many people have followed her along on social media and everywhere. She's on the face of Children's Miracle Network as well. Peyton is almost 12 years old, perfectly healthy, and she is quite the survivor and miracle. Over time, yes. She would be taking a bow right now if anyone has met her. She is all that and more. Over the years, the grief has changed, and we've learned. Divorce statistics show, I believe it's something 60 or 70% of parents that endure child loss actually stay together. And for my husband and I, we grew. It took a lot of talking and understanding that, my husband's way of grieving and dealing with our deaths as well as our survivor is going to be different from me, who wears my heart on my sleeve and openly talks about it here. But little things, as I was looking for that letter this week, I happened to see a note, and this was left on the coffee pot, and this was one of the many, many anniversaries that unfortunately we have to live through, but we also love to live through because they existed. In it said, I love you, make sure to take time for yourself and reflect on the day and think of all the lives that Parker has touched. That's our son. And that was on one of his anniversaries. And that's just how we do it. There are easy years, there are difficult years, but we all grieve some way. And it may not be the same. There is no blueprint for grief. Maybe you are grieving right now the loss of a spouse, or the loss of a child like us, or infertility, or the loss of a friend, or a parent. But we all are grieving some way. And I want to leave you with this. The one thing we all have in common is that grief shows us that we loved. And I hope that you're like me, finding that path, and someday you will find, maybe it's today, maybe it's happened, maybe it'll be a year from now, but you'll find that grief and happiness can coexist. Thank you.
Hello.
Hey, Verónica.
Hi. So today I want to talk about our connections, our shared dreams, and humanity. I also want to talk about what makes home home, and about harvesting joy. I can tell you that having started my life over a couple of times, I know about joy. Before coming to the US, I had 28 full years of life in the southernmost country in the world. I'm the third of 4 sisters. I grew up in Chile with parents that were crazy about science, who taught us math and chemistry and physics at an early age, hoping that these 4 girls they were raising would go to school to study hard science, or at least medicine. And we, which is pretty remarkable for parents that decided your future, chose to disappoint them by becoming an engineer, a teacher, a journalist, and a psychologist. I'm the journalist. It is crazy how human beings adapt to unbelievable situations, because now that I tell you about the paths my sisters and I chose, I think about how we planned for any of this, careers or dreams, while blackouts and bombings were going on in Santiago, our city. You see, I was 3 when the coup happened, and after the takeover, I grew up under a military dictatorship with no free press
and where Congress, judicial, and the executive powers were suspended and replaced by a military junta. And in those 16 years, when terrible things happened, we sisters had birthdays. We went swimming in the ocean and dreamed of becoming something and someone. This is incredible to me that we did this under sheer uncertainty and dangerous times. Yet we looked for small joys and pleasures in life as part of our daily survival because we had to. Our childhood, for the most part, was around learning, going outside and riding our bikes, playing cards and dominoes, and sharing with friends. About 10 years before the Cold War ended, I looked at playing sports and playing with my sisters and studying as the only possible outlets in our lives. We learned in my family at an early age that it was healthy to have a general lack of trust in institutions because most of them, at the time in which I was growing up, had absolute power. This absolute power caused terrible harm. So we developed this second nature to keep ourselves alive. You see, I had relatives in exile, friends of friends disappeared, and others killed. And while I know this, and I can say this now, I didn't know it at the time. It was all kept quiet. I believe that the times that we live in shape us. And I would like to add that we are all capable of transcending such times. How do we go against the current? How do we fight bullies and gather strength when harm is being done? Well, here we are at my second story. Joy, friendship, family, and community are central to my life. All of them are sources of extended happiness. So when I remember the first law of thermodynamics, did I tell you that my parents were crazy about science and they taught me physics pretty early? Well, when I remember that the law of conservation of energy asserts that energy within an isolated system is conserved, and it states that energy cannot be created or destroyed, only transformed or transferred, I'm even happier. Think about it, as a kid I did, and I came to the conclusion that since creating energy or destroying it is out of the question, transforming energy is our life's work. And we women are at the center of this universal energy transformation. And whether we physically give birth or not, we women are the change makers and the educators, the peacemakers and the builders of critical mass. Women transforming energy results in a paradigm shift with new ways of thinking and doing. And maybe this is why I love art, music, all of it is energy transformed. I told my daughter Almendra, who is the person in my life for whom I will change everything, that if I ever had a superpower, it was the ability to do integrative thinking, which is basically learning from different disciplines. I not only look at data or case studies to think about things, I also look at the fantastic evidence that our storytelling, our poetry and music continue to leave humanity as a lesson plan to learn to use our hearts and brains. This is in part a pedagogy of freedom, to think with the heart and brain, to transform energy and to harvest joy. Now, what else is central to joy? Finding the place that you call home. I was looking at places in the Chilean Patagonia on my Instagram some time ago, and while I was watching videos of volcanoes and glaciers and places I have never been to, I had this incredible awareness that my brain had started to almost whisper things to me. Like for me to pay attention, and no longer in English, but in Spanish. We sometimes forget that our brains have that capacity to build associations between language, geography, and memory. And because of this whisper that took me back to my Spanish-speaking self, a song started to play in my head like on repeat, and it's called Tengo el corazón mirando al sur. The heart I have is looking south. It talks about missing your ancestral home. Chile is the only place in the world where I can understand and I can ground myself in the land, in direct relation to the Andes Mountains and the Pacific Ocean. And while this sounds like a metaphor, it is absolutely not. Everything you do in Chile, walking, driving, going to the office, taking the train, any movement within the land centers on whether you're going to the mountains or to the ocean. And I miss that, because in the absence of that, after migrating to the US, I had to literally learn my place and space in this new world. Living in the US taught me that I not only had to learn cardinal points, I also had to learn my place. And when you learn your place in a new world, at least in terms of geography, things you don't think that can happen, happen. And I'm gonna leave in suspense because I need water. For example, I learned that I was a mestiza, that my ancestors were from the Mapuche nation, and though I always knew that I was in part an indigenous person, it was this US obsession with fabricated categories like race what prompted me to take my first DNA test to find my roots. I also learned that I was a Latina. The certain behaviors were assigned to me because of it. And believe me, being the troublemaker that I am, I have tried hard to stay away from all the stereotypes. Now, having a heart looking south also means that we South Americans, like Chileans and Argentinians, we are longing for a different way of existing and being. It's not just that the South and the North have been defined in terms of power before. The realization I had is that I had to go north to learn how South I was. I realized that by learning my geographic place and discovering identities within me, I had also learned that one, my place is not the place where statistics attempt to confine me. And two, as a Latina immigrant, I share spaces with Black and brown sisters. We have lived historic margins together. Our children have gone to go to school together, and we have faced obstacles and challenges. The joy of learning this centers the fact that we have been willing to create inclusive community, and where we engage in work that not only empowers, but also transforms. So, what makes us sisters, comadres, and friends? What aspects of our lives connect us? Well, I'm going to leave you one last story that I learned from American anthropologist Margaret Mead. Early in her career, Margaret was giving a lecture when a student asked her, "What would you say is the earliest sign of civilization?" And Margaret said, "When you hear this, what comes to mind are clay pots, tools made of metal, domesticated pets." And she added, "Well, these are all early signs, but here's what I believe to be evidence of the earliest true civilization." And high above her head, she held a human femur, the largest bone in the leg, and pointed to a thickened area where the bone had been fractured and then solidly healed. Such signs of healings are never found among the remains of the early societies, Margaret said. Instead, in their skeletons, we find clues of violence, like, for example, a rib pierced by an arrow. But this healed bone shows that someone must have cared for the injured person. They hunted on their behalf, brought them food, served them at their own personal risk and sacrifice, and watched over them. In the animal world, where survival is hard, Margaret said, you break a leg and you die. We humans are at our best when we help each other. So I'm sure you've heard me talk about before about healing as an act of communion, and about the fact that literally, when we have been wounded, our healing is not just achieved in our personal work and therapy, that healing is achieved best in community. So I am here, ready to help my sisters with a broken femur or a hurt toe, with institutional wounds or moral injuries, with the wounds of poverty or a broken heart. We share that one responsibility to help each other not only to just survive, but to live life and find joy. And, as I told my bestie a couple of years ago, I'm here because ultimately, we are all walking each other home. Thank you.
Good evening. If you know me well, you are certain to have heard a story or two about my great-grandpa, Elmer Buckner. I have said many times he is the best person I have ever known, and if over the course of my life I turn out to be half the person he was, I will be 100% better for it. I didn't know a lot about my grandpa's upbringing. I know he was from Callaway County, Missouri, and that he grew up with several brothers and sisters. He wasn't the oldest, and he wasn't the youngest. I remember great-uncles Ben and Andrew and great-aunt Mary Frances, but I think there were others. I know his father's name was Frank, and his mother's name was Carrie, because she was my namesake. And I know he was born on March 2nd, 1900, which made him 69 years old when I, his daughter's daughter, and the first great-grandchild, was born on July 19th, 1969, at Passavant Hospital in Jacksonville, Illinois. My mom was a single parent, and I was her only child. My dad didn't live with us, and his presence in my life was intermittent at best. My mom worked full-time, and we lived next door to my grandparents, so they were my primary caregivers. My great-grandmother liked to stay close to home, but my grandpa was the social butterfly. He drove me to and from school, we ran errands together, and it was rare to see him without me. And when we would go places together, everyone seemed to know him. And we couldn't go to the store without somebody stopping to chat him up. I remember waiting and waiting and waiting for him to stop talking to people so we could get wherever we were going. And if you know me, that probably sounds a bit familiar. My daughters can confirm. At some point along the way, I adopted my grandfather's gregariousness and hopefully a modicum of his charm. And I run into friends, colleagues, and acquaintances everywhere. I remember learning that my grandpa was only able to attend school through the 6th grade. He didn't read or write well, but he knew there was value in education. He encouraged me to pay attention and do well in school. He told me I was smart. His dream was that one day I would become a teacher or a secretary. I remember in elementary school there were lots of spelling tests, and I loved words, then and now, and spelling was always one of my favorite subjects. My grandpa recognized letters, but he wasn't always familiar with words. I learned to memorize my spelling tests, both how to spell the words and the order of the words on the lists, so that I could help my grandpa quiz me. He felt useful, and I became a rock star speller with nice penmanship. I can't remember exactly why, but my grandpa and I often found ourselves at my favorite place in Jacksonville, the Wade and Dowland office supply store. Thus began my lifelong obsession with office supplies. Paper clips, notepads, calculators, and my personal favorite, stamp pads and ink. I can only imagine how many games of store my gramps had to sit through so I could ring him up and bag up his items. Second only to the office supply store was Bella Braddock's, the family-owned bookstore in the downtown square. I distinctly remember my friend Sara and I voraciously reading teen romance novels about Sweet Valley High. We made sure to alternate buying books so that we could exchange with each other when we were finished and maximize our shared library. Those trips to the bookstore fostered my ongoing love for reading. As a tween, I remember helping my grandpa with his lawn business. He tended lawns for several Jacksonville area families. We would load his 2 push mowers and all of his gardening supplies into the trunk of his dark green Plymouth Fury 3 and head to the houses of his regulars. This became my summer job until I was old enough to apply for a work permit and find a job indoors. But it's funny how life comes full circle, because now mowing the lawn is one of my favorite home maintenance tasks, and I truly look forward to it. My grandpa's Plymouth Fury 3 is the same big boat of a car in which I would eventually learn to drive, with my grandpa exercising infinite patience even when I had my learner's permit and accidentally drove us both into a telephone pole. It was the first week of December, 1985. He was 85 and I was 15. We were less than a mile from home. We had just gone out to fill up the car with gas to make the morning go more smoothly. Instead, we went to the hospital for a concussion check for him and a treatment for a busted lip for me, since his head hit the windshield and my face hit the steering wheel. 40 years later, and I still have the scar from that accident right here. But my grandpa wasn't the least bit upset with me. And both of us still made it to my high school basketball game that Thursday night. My grandpa never missed a game. It didn't matter if I was starting or sitting the bench. Neither he or my mom were good with maps, so they just followed the team bus to all of the away games. My grandpa passed away from arteriosclerosis and dementia when I was 21, 8 weeks after I finished undergrad and moved to Springfield for graduate school. He wasn't well enough to attend my college graduation, and he didn't know I would go on to get my master's degree. He never knew what career path I took or witnessed me in a professional setting. He never saw me give a presentation or receive an honor. He didn't get to attend my wedding, meet my daughters, or comfort me during my divorce. He never got to see me run a marathon, buy a house, or teach my kids to drive. I actually knew him less than 40% of my life. My grandpa wasn't familiar with terms like validation, affirmation, unconditional positive regard, but he expressed those traits every single day, and I absorbed that, admired that, aspired to that in my own life. I believe in second chances, kind words, and forgiveness. I believe you don't have to attend every argument that you're invited to. And I believe people remember the way you make them feel. Because here I am all these years later telling you stories that take me back to my childhood. I still remember how my fat lip felt after meeting that steering wheel when our car hit the telephone pole, and I can practically smell the freshly mowed grass from his customer's lawn or taste the lemon ice cream from the Dream Cream where Grandpa took me on the regular. Lemon, my favorite, then and now, was a specialty flavor and only came around every few weeks. I chose to study psychology and sociology in college and human development counseling in graduate school. My first professional job was as a case manager for Big Brothers Big Sisters of Sangamon County, followed by a job at the local Rape Crisis Center, Rape Information and Counseling Services, now Prairie Center Against Sexual Assault. Before my career at the Illinois Coalition Against Sexual Assault, where I've spent nearly 3 decades. And while I never held the title of teacher or secretary professionally, I have been fortunate to utilize skills from both those valued careers in much of the work that I do. I'm a joiner. I haven't met a club, a board, a task force, or an association that I haven't at least considered being on. And once I'm in it, you can count on me to contribute as a member in whatever way best matches my skill set. I like to believe that willingness to jump into the fray and be a helper was also inspired by my grandpa, who would help anyone with anything at any time. There are things in my life that have not gone according to plan, and there have been times that I have needed to pivot. But I can tell you with confidence that I have always known there was at least one person in this world who thought I absolutely hung the moon. I needed that. I think we all need that. A person who believes in your potential just because you exist. And I have learned that we have a responsibility to be that for other people. I want my interactions with other people to leave them slightly better than they were before. And I want the energy that emanates from me to always be more positive than negative. And I want to believe that my part of the world is slightly better because of my contributions. I feel confident that if my grandpa could see me now, he would be so proud of the woman I have grown to be. The family that I have raised, the career that I have chosen, the people who hold space in my heart, and the community to which I belong. He would be proud, but he would not be surprised, because he would have told you I became who he already knew I was, and for that, I am eternally grateful. Thank you.
much, ladies, and I can tell that things are sinking in. I can tell that there is an engagement that's happening, that you all are identifying with these stories. Let's give these ladies another round of applause. We have much more to come. We're only halfway there, so there is much more for you to take in and enjoy and learn from. I want to thank, first of all, our silver sponsors. We have PNC Financial Services, and thank you to them. And an IBW Local Union 702, thank you to them. And Troxel and Grinnell Mutual, thank you to them as well. We have intermission now. It'll be 15 minutes. We have a cash bar outside, so enjoy, and we'll see you back here very shortly. Get situated here. Hello, everyone. How are you? Did you have a good intermission? Good, great. We're glad to see everyone back and refreshed. We have just as much more to go now. We have so many more stories and opportunities for you to connect with so many more experiences that people have had, and there's much more to come. We do want to give a warm thank you and appreciation of support to our gold sponsors. First of all, Bun, thank you so much for being part of this. Also, the Illinois State Conference of IBEW, International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, thank you. Also, we wanted special thank you to Carpet Weavers for our beautiful set, the furniture. This is amazing. I need you guys to come to my house because this is really, I was sitting here, I'm like, this is beautiful. So, wonderful job there. And we want to thank their amazing ongoing support of the That's What She Said Springfield event, as well as the She Said project as a whole. So thank you again to Carpet Weavers for that. Well, we have I told you that we'd be talking a little bit more about what the Children's Advocacy Center does, and we're going to sit down now and have a discussion to bring out some of the topics and the interest of what happens. So I want to introduce the CEO of CACI, Kim Mangiaracino. Come on out, Kim. Hello.
Hello.
You are behind all of this. There's so many people have put this event on, but you are behind all of it. And this has been so wonderful that we are able to learn more about what CACI does and bring this to the community and raise this awareness for your organization. So thank you so much for putting this event on for everyone.
Such a pleasure. It's a pleasure to have this cast of women here from Springfield, a pleasure to see so many people in the audience, and to have you here with us today. So thank you.
Thank you. Now, as the CEO, can you tell us a little bit about what you do and why this work is so important?
Absolutely. So CACI is a membership organization of the 41 Children's Advocacy Centers across the state. All 102 counties of Illinois are covered with the Child Advocacy Center. And at our state chapter here in Springfield, our job is to support them. And we do that through funding, through federal funding and state funding. We do that through monitoring to make sure that they're able to do everything that they're able to do for kids and their families when they see them. We do a lot of training each year for our multidisciplinary partners who work with Children's Advocacy Centers. And just overall, anything that we can do to make their jobs better and easier, we do that. For the over 12,000 kids a year that visit Children's Advocacy Centers.
That's an astonishing number. And you do all do a great job of supporting people that are around you. This is a field that, whether you work in it or not, you can understand that this is not an easy career to take on. It can be heartbreaking at times. What is it that keeps you going on these hardest days?
I've been in the Children's Advocacy field for about 20 years now. I started as a forensic interviewer. I had the pleasure of, or I shouldn't say pleasure, the honor of interviewing many children, and I didn't know anything about Children's Advocacy Centers when I started. The opportunity to sit down and to have a child be able to tell you what happened to them in their words, in the way that they're able to tell, and that you just listen, is a gift. It's a gift that we give them and that we receive in return, that they're able to do that. So I think what keeps me going is exactly that, just giving kids the opportunity to talk for themselves and to tell what happened to them, and give them the opportunity to heal. People often ask me, how do you do that work? That is so, it should be so heartbreaking and it's terrible. And I have never felt that way. I have always felt like the bad stuff already happened. We are on to the next phase of their life, and they get to grow from that, and their family gets to get support from that. And they are terrible stories, and they are horrendous. The things that people do to children can sometimes be overwhelming, but seeing that resilience, seeing them be able to move on with their life, that keeps me going.
This is something that you say, you talk about hope and healing that you provide, but what would you say is the biggest challenge that you see children facing when they finally come to you?
There are all kinds of challenges, and that is why our multidisciplinary team works so well together. There's a challenge, as Rikeesha was talking about earlier, of kids feeling like they're going to be believed. There's a challenge of kids feeling like they're not sure they can tell you what's going on. There's a lot of shame involved. They're kids, and they've got to recall these terrible things that have happened. It's challenging, but also for them to have that space to talk about it. It does, you can see the relief on their face oftentimes of like, oh, I can do this. I can do those hard things. So that is, it's challenging, but also, again, we give them those tools that they're able, Children's Advocacy Centers were founded on a prosecution model to make sure that cases can be prosecuted better. However, they've really evolved into full services where kids can receive advocacy, they can receive mental health treatment, they can get specialized medical care, and they can know that there's hope. Their parents can know that there's hope, and things can get better.
Absolutely, and you use the child advocacy term. Explain a little more about how you work with them on that and what that means to them.
Absolutely. So at a Children's Advocacy Center, everything is child focused. The area itself is based on children and youth and what makes them feel comfortable. So they don't go to a police station or an office, a setting. They're coming into a place that is set up for them, and that we're able to, again, talk to them in a way that they're able to do that. So that system works best for them, so they're not talking to a police officer, they're not having to go through those difficult conversations. We're walking them through that space, and then we'll be with them as long as they need. So that interview is the first part at the Children's Advocacy Center, but we stay with them until sometimes through the court system, sometimes through their therapy. As much as they want us to be in their life, we will be there.
And as you said, the worst part has already happened. So you want to help prevent any more trauma, any further trauma, and help mitigate that and help soothe what they're looking for, which is being able to share their story. I also imagine that you mentioned other parents, other family members who may not be able to speak out as well. Be giving voice to them as well, and probably these children are they relieved that other family members can now speak about it, speak with them about it?
Child sexual abuse is a secret. It's a secret in our families, it's a secret in our lives, it's a secret in our society. And when there's an opportunity to talk about it, there is a relief for the family. It is not saying it's easy after they leave. There's often a change in dynamics in the entire family, depending on what has happened. but we help them through those times. That victim advocate will be working with the parents, and the parents will call and say, my child is doing this, I'm feeling this way. And just that assurance that that's okay, or that's normal, or they're okay, you're okay, can mean all the world of difference for parents, because it's a struggle, and many of them have never been through this situation before. So to be able to just give them that comfort and give them that reassurance can help them support their child through that time.
Yeah, such a scary thing to navigate. Yeah. What's next for CACI? Do you have big dreams and goals? Do you have some plans that are ahead for the organization?
Absolutely. We are growing, and the good news is the research shows that child sexual abuse is actually decreasing, and that is what we all want. However, our goal is to always serve every child, no matter where you live in the state of Illinois, no matter what your circumstances are, no matter what. You deserve quality care. You deserve to be given that same experience that other kids are. So my biggest goal for CACI and for Children's Advocacy Centers in Illinois is that we make it available, or that all kids, no matter what, make their way to a Children's Advocacy Center. And they get all of the services that they deserve. That's my biggest goal, and as our organization has grown, when I started in this organization 10 years ago, we had 4 staff. We've just hired the 15th, and it's been fantastic. The newest staff member is a human trafficking coordinator for the state. So that is a position that didn't exist before. We have pockets around the state that have services for human trafficking, but there's no connector. So CACI is an amazing connector. We're a trusted partner with the police and with DCFS and with other agencies. And then that's an example that human trafficking, they can put all those pieces together. That is our goal, to make services seamless for everyone.
Absolutely. So many pieces, so many parts. It's so complicated on many levels. And I think people can get very overwhelmed addressing this subject if they want to help. They don't know how to help. How would you advise somebody that wants to help? And what would you say would be the best way to move forward?
I often say, and this might sound simple, the biggest way that people can help is to listen, to get involved, to not be afraid to hear some things. Whether the kids in your life, it's really important that kids have a safe, neutral place that they can just talk to you about things, that nothing's off limits, nothing's too scary to talk about. I'm okay, I'm a safe adult. In my life, safe adults have been such an important part of that. People that you can trust, people that you can go to with anything. And that's what I think is the biggest thing people can do. But you can also follow us on social media. There are a lot of tips on how to talk to kids. There are statistics. You can get involved with your local Children's Advocacy Center. There are opportunities for fundraising. There are opportunities to volunteer. And just to get involved. And also, when somebody says, do you know what a Child Advocacy Center is? You say, yes, I actually do. That is the biggest thing, because as we talked about, it's a secret, and people don't want to talk about it, but it's like the worst kept secret, because so many people have experienced this in their lives. So I think the biggest thing people can do is just be really open to hearing and talking about this.
And what about specifically donating, if people are interested in donating to CACI?
We like money, yeah. Yes.
It works.
The work that we do is expensive, and it costs a lot of money, and we have opportunities for people to donate through the year. We have monthly donors, we have annual giving. We are exploring other opportunities for that. Tonight is a big opportunity for us to raise funds, because when we talk about those big dreams, we are funded mostly on grants, and we manage those grants very well, but some things aren't covered in that. So we like to think about outside of the box about what programs we might want to have, what data is a huge area right now that we're expanding in, being able to actually collect data and analyze it and doing research, and those things all cost money. So yes, donating is great, and you can go to our website with a QR code, and that will sign you up for our new newsletters. We have a monthly newsletter for the public, and you're able to follow us. You'll be able to see what events come, and you can always hit the donate button, yes.
Absolutely. And more information in the program, I think, as well. I think there's a QR code in the program, so you guys can take that home and look through that. So, so many ways to help. Tonight is really just a start of, a whole new genre, maybe, of getting awareness out for this organization and for the people, the children, and the families that you serve. Thank you so much, Kim, for sharing all of this with us. We thank you and everyone involved.
Thank you all.
And we are moving ahead with more stories from these wonderful women. I want to bring the ladies back out, give them a round of applause. We're going to start with Amy Wheeler.
Hello. So, my title might be a bit dramatic. I do have a great life, but it took me some time to get here. I grew up in the mountains of Appalachia. Yes, Appalachia. Where the borders of Kentucky and Tennessee and Virginia meet. Right smack in the middle of the Bible Belt. As if you didn't hear it, right? So for those of you that aren't familiar with the Bible Belt, it's a belt of social expectations. Have you ever worn a belt that's too tight? It's uncomfortable. I would argue that my hometown had the perfect pinch on my psyche. Maybe it still does. Very much like a belt that's too tight, it reminds you every single time you breathe. I went to a missionary Baptist church with my mama, which meant if you were having fun, it must be a sin. I disliked going to church with her because it meant I had to be quiet. I had to sit still and I had to wear a dress. And although I loved being inside reading fairy tales and other books, I was also a tomboy and wanted to play in the dirt. You can't wear a dress and play in the dirt. Well, okay, you can, but you shouldn't. So, this is my story. So, I liked being outside and exploring. I wanted to spend my time riding horses and playing with all the animals. I especially loved my Tonka truck. I was a good girl who mostly followed the rules and did what she was told. I was a daddy's girl, but I got a little defiant when my parents separated in 1983 and later divorced. A few years later, in 1989, my sister and I were in the kitchen with my mother discussing a very important topic, prom. As a sophomore invited by a junior, it was a very big deal, y'all. But the topic soon turned into speculation between my sister and I because I thought this kid was gay. Okay, disclaimer, I didn't even understand what being gay meant, but whatever it was, in my small town, it wasn't good. So as my sister and I are speculating, the conversation must have been enough to get under my mama's skin. She interrupted our gossip. Girls, stop it. You have a family member that's gay, and this could hurt their feelings. My sister and I exchanged quick glances of panic. Wait, what? Silence smothered the air. I honestly have no idea what she said after that. I was too busy trying to figure out who it was. How could this be? How did I not know? And what did it mean? It certainly was not good.
In 1990, I met the man that I would later marry and who became the father of my 2 beautiful children. When we got married in January of 1994, I hadn't even turned 21. So sidebar, does anybody else think that it's weird that I could get married and not legally drink? Because that's a weird fairy tale on my side. So as far as I was concerned, I had done all the things that I'd been told to do and conditioned to do. I graduated high school, I went off to college, I was determined to be the best wife because I found my Prince Charming, just like the stories promised. So why was it that something was off? Why was I spending a little too much time thinking about how pretty some girls were? Why did I feel drawn to some women and not others? What was wrong with me? Fairy tales end with a wedding and just say, and they lived happily ever after. So as a person who overthinks everything, I have no idea who I thought queer people were. I didn't look like other girls who didn't date boys. Newsflash, I didn't really know that it was okay for girls to be queer. How would I? What fairy tale, role model, or TV show even suggested that I could like girls? I mean, looking back, I was watching women role models on TV, but they were role models on how to be a badass. I loved the only female member of the A-Team. Her name was Amy. I loved watching Catwoman, but I really loved, and I still love, Wonder Woman. Man, those spins. I still want my own lasso of truth. So on April 30th, 1997, and shortly after my 24th birthday, Ellen DeGeneres came out to the world, personally and as the character on her TV show. She was the first lesbian lead character on a major network, but she also lost her career for 3 years in doing so. According to a study in 2015, she did more to influence Americans' attitudes about gay rights than any other celebrity or public figure. The following year, President Obama awarded her with the Medal of Freedom, the highest civilian award, acknowledging her bravery. Also in 2015, after years of being over, it came as no surprise to others that my marriage ended. But what came to many people's surprise is that I began to date a woman. Some of my closest friends and family knew that I was attracted to women, but not my kids. How do you tell your kids, Mommy also likes girls? Let me be clear. I raised my children with an understanding of acceptance and tolerance to be good allies. But it had already been a tough year, and they were struggling. My ex told me that if I didn't tell the kids that he would, another pinch from that belt to my psyche. I lost friendships of 30 years. I became the topic of gossip. So much fear and so many conversations when I couldn't even make sense of it all. I can't imagine the difficulty my teenage self would have had coming out. The fear, the shame, the questioning of acceptance. Pinch, pinch. I think coming out in your 40s has to be easier than what it might have been for my friends coming out in the 80s and 90s, if they even came out. One classmate didn't come out to his mom until just a few years ago, and he was then quickly warned not to tell his dying father. Another pinch. And can we talk about this term, coming out, for a minute? I invite each of you to think differently. Us queer folk, we're letting you in. We are letting you in and being vulnerable. We are letting you into our spaces, ones where we can be authentic. We have seen hate. We know friends who have been kicked out of their homes and lost their families. We have seen or endured discrimination and bullying. We know people are actively trying to harm us, politically and personally. We know the stories of suicide, the struggle of not loving or accepting ourselves. We know the risk of speaking our truth. Pinch, pinch, and pinch. This is why visibility is so very important. In 2017, Dr. Jennifer O'Brien wrote, "When people are able to see something represented, they are better able to understand and grasp who those people are, and this creates an important shift in the social consciousness to include people from a range of different backgrounds." A blogger, Julian Crossan Hill, said it best. LGBTQ visibility is about being a beacon of hope and acceptance to other queer people as they come to terms with their queer identity. It's also about protecting our rights and reminding the rest of society that not everyone walks to the beat of the same drum. End quote. I don't say this lightly because I believe that it could help save a life. We must be visible. And we need all the allies that we can find. If you aren't sure what to do, please find me after the show. So, maybe you're wondering about my happily ever after. I'd rather say that just like a Hallmark movie, there's no surprise. I got the girl. Or maybe she got me, I don't know. I tell people all the time that I followed love to Illinois. On November 15, 2016, I legally and secretly married Dr. Celeste Weave at the courthouse just around the corner from here. Unbeknown to our family and friends, we changed our plans because we couldn't risk having another Kim Davis refusing to marry us in Kentucky. So on a very hot, and I mean very hot, July 22nd of 2017, we celebrated our love safely and with our family. And for the record, this time I picked a winery. And fun fact, Celeste and I celebrate both anniversaries. Something else fairy tales don't tell you. So I want to end by saying, while some trips back home can be uncomfortable, I'm learning how to loosen that uncomfortable belt. And I proudly trade it for the lasso of truth. Thank you to my family and friends, especially my children and Celeste. I love you all so very much, and thank you all for your support.
Good evening, everybody. Good evening. So my plan was to be a pediatrician when I grew up. That's what my teachers told me I should be because I was pretty good at math and science. So that's what I was going to do until my junior year in high school. While visiting colleges, I realized how many more years I'd be in school to be a doctor. And I didn't even really like math or science. So on my way home from visiting Augustana College, I scratched pediatrician and several colleges off my list. So now what? Well, my parents had been in radio and print journalism, so I thought, okay, I'll do that. Not a very well thought out plan, but after saying yes to studying for a career in broadcasting, I landed at SIU Edwardsville as a communications major and showed up at the college radio station, where my boss said, hey, we need someone to cover the St. Louis Cardinals, Rams, and Blues. I like sports, I played sports, but I thought, what? Do girls even do that? But I found my way to yes. It was an opportunity to be at the highest level of sports. What I found out pretty quickly was that girls weren't really doing sports broadcasting in the early 2000s. I had seen one woman on national TV reporting from the sidelines, but I was the only woman I saw in the locker rooms. Yes, I said locker rooms. Yeah. I'll tell you some more stories after the show. No. But so at that time, reporters had to go into the locker rooms to get the interviews. You know, where the players take showers and walk around with and without a towel? Did you know that all the reporters waited in line after the game to do this? And when you got in there, the players were walking around naked. Awkward. I was like, doesn't anybody around here think this is weird? I had 2 policies. I would not ask any player any question when they were naked. No. And if they asked me out on a date, which did happen a couple times, also no. The teams I covered were very supportive. I was just one of the boys. When someone grabbed my behind in the press box, not another reporter, but a guest, the PR team promptly kicked them out. I had a kindred spirit in Melody, one of the only other women in pro sports PR. I'll never forget her kindness. It wasn't until I started this job that for the first time in my life, I felt like I was the only one in the room. Women, you know what I mean by that. It's a good thing I didn't date any of those players, despite groans from my dad and brother. That would have been unprofessional. Plus, I wanted to be on the fast track to take Katie Couric's job when she retired from the Today Show. In fact, besides my high school boyfriend, my record for dating anyone was, give or take, 2 weeks. Just when a guy wanted to see me more than once a week or talked about getting serious, I was like, no, I'm too busy for that. I had a very hard time getting to yes. It was hard enough working full-time at the TV station and then traveling on the weekends to St. Louis to do some stories for Fox Sports Midwest. But then I met Jose from Bolivia. I bet you might have to look at a world map to see exactly where Bolivia is. I did. Anyway, Jose was different. When I said, I can see you once a week, he said, okay. Can I mow your lawn while you're traveling for work? When I said, I think we should break up, he said, okay, if that's what you want. What? No, that's not how this is supposed to go. I actually told him up front, I'm not the marrying kind. If you even think about asking me to marry you before I'm ready, I guarantee you the answer will be no. I even came up with this convoluted plan. I told him I wouldn't say, I'm ready to get married. I'd say, I'm ready to go back to Bolivia. So one random day, I'm driving down MacArthur near Town and Country, and I said, hey, I'm ready to go back to Bolivia. Without a change in expression, he said, okay, and kept driving. That's my guy. We'll be married 14 years this August, and God bless, yes. And God blessed us with twin boys, Augie and Charlie, which I think they might still be here unless they fell asleep. The 3 loves of my life that I wouldn't have if I hadn't found my way to yes. Which reminds me of one last story. I left TV and got into communications work. In my early 30s, I think I went a bit crazy in finding my way to yes. I ran for the Springfield Park Board and won. Those 4 years were a great experience, but when it came time to run for a second term, I couldn't do it. With a new husband, infant twins, and full-time work, I thought, now I know why it's hard for women to balance all of this and run for office. So I decided not to run and figured I probably wouldn't again until my kids were grown. So my term in that job ended in the spring of 2015, but my desire to serve did not. When Raymond Poe left his position as state representative that same year, I thought, I could do that, so I put my name in. I was appointed to be the state representative, an honor of a lifetime, but my most difficult job so far. The timing was such that I had to start collecting signatures right away for the 2016 ballot. I quickly realized how much support I had and how so many people hated me. And how some people I thought would support me didn't. I'm sure nobody hears. And how some I didn't expect to found their way to yes. It was humbling, life-changing. I remember walking in the state fair parade with my family when someone shouted at us, I hate you. I hate you. And one of my 4-year-old twins asked, why is that man saying that? I replied, I don't know. Maybe we didn't give him enough candy? The major issue when I started was that Illinois was already 4 months into a budget impasse. Many vendors in the district weren't being paid. It was my #1 priority to get a budget on the books. My constituents told me so. At church, at the grocery store, everywhere. Sometimes not so nicely, but I understood. Slow forward to 2017, still no budget. Thousands of vendors weren't getting paid. The backlog of bills was nearing $16 billion. We were on our way to setting the record for the longest state budget impasse in history. So what did I do? I talked with legislators in both parties who just wanted to get this done. To do that, I had to reject the plea of my own party's governor. 10 of us in the minority party joined the majority to end the impasse and override his veto in the Illinois House. So we found our way to yes on a balanced budget with some cuts and billions in new revenue after more than 700 days without a full budget. Was it perfect? No, not even close. But my constituents demanded that I find my way to yes. That vote was the hardest, most public, most controversial yes I've ever come to. I knew I disappointed some colleagues, the governor, and some constituents. Nearly all 10 of us who bucked the governor and the caucus leader were gone from the legislature within a year or two. That vote was the beginning of the end of my political career, for now. Sometimes when you find your way to yes, it doesn't lead to a glamorous sports reporting career or the love of your life and perfect twin boys. Sometimes it means making a brave decision, finding courage within yourself to do the right thing. For me, finding my way to yes takes a little bit longer than it does for others. I overthink things. I look at situations from every single angle, think of all the ways something could go wrong, and my first thought is usually a big fat, no. That's the no-risk path, safety, not courage. But I keep learning the benefits of finding my way to yes. So what have I learned? That before any difficult yes comes uncertainty, struggle, and conflict. Getting to yes requires accepting the reality of the struggle, not avoiding it, but naming it and making the choice. Sometimes a heart-wrenching choice to find a way through it. I encourage you to find your way to a difficult yes. I don't think you'll regret it. Thank you.
I didn't pay them.
Waiting on my check.
It's in the mail, Gail Simpson.
Kind of love you, Mom.
Love you too, Jesse. Thank you all. I'm glad to be here. Hey, beautiful lady. Thank you, Catherine. Hey, beautiful lady. Let me borrow your wallet. Okay. So, I'm not sure where I should start this story. So what I'm going to do is begin at the end to start at the beginning.
All right now.
Okay? After 48 years of a wonderful marriage, I lost my life partner to COVID and pneumonia in July of 2022. While we had taken all the precautions to avoid this deadly disease due to John's medical condition, little did we know that it would take him out on his 75th birthday. We had always talked about the things that we would do should one of us die. Cremation, there would be no big deal. Here's what to do with that. This is what you should do with this, so forth and so on. Even with all that in place, I was just not prepared to start my life as a single woman.
All right.
Little bit about John Trees. I had known and loved this guy since I was 21. Met him in a bar under the Schlitz face cards on August 28th, 1974. Now that's a true story. It was the Metro at 15th and Cook Street. Cecil, remember where that was? So, I was young, I was skinny. I know you can't tell that by looking at me now. And I was cute. He was tall, he was handsome, and there he was. And something said, with his blue eyes, and something said about him, he's yours, Candice. So, we were married 30 days later on September 28th, 1974. Told you it was a love story. And it was a love story. There was a little lust in there, but it was a love story, okay? He was a great provider, a great encourager, and a loving supporter of my many adventures in life. But of course, he also was very quirky for those of you that knew him. Did I mention that we had a goat in our backyard? Remember that, Jesse? We had go-karts in our backyard. He said he grew up in a farm over in Champaign County. He said he never had a birthday party, so he used to throw birthday parties for himself, and he'd have the best birthday parties, and they were big birthday parties. Like you're someone special, he was one of a kind. 3 beautiful daughters, 4 grandchildren later, and a host of brother-in-laws that were all on my side. The brother-in-laws were my brothers and their wives and nieces and nephews and greats and graders and all kinds of folks that we had on my side of the family because he only had a brother. The time had come for all of us to say goodbye to John. He and I still had a couple of forevers to share with whomever would, we had a couple of forevers left in us, a few more trips here and there, and a lot more opinions to share with whomever would listen. And of course, we give our grandchildren, grandparents advice. After all, who had the best advice in life to give other than grandparents because we'd experienced everything, right? So God said otherwise to him living any longer, so we had to say goodbye to Papa John. So that's the beginning, that's the end to the beginning. One day, while I was visiting my youngest daughter in Houston, and I'm sorry, somebody has to be blamed, so I'm going to blame Johanna because she lives in Houston. For what I'm about to tell you, I was playing around on the computer and decided I would start searching on Match.com, black singles, and a few other dating sites. Who knows what I might find? I might find me a good catch, right? So I signed up. It was just started out as a joke, and it was quite hilarious. Some of the dudes were in there on that site were beyond interesting. What was strange is I matched up with a tremendous number of white guys. Well, now, my guy was white, and I was married to him for 48 years, so that really, I guess it probably really wasn't strange. But when I put my stuff in there, this is my story, okay? What is it? This is my story. So what, I guess when I put it in, you have to put all this information in. I play golf. I have a master's degree. I participate in a lot of professional organizations, and so I put all that stuff in. And so I'm just not sure why those matches came up that way. Now, did I mention to you that I am a big, huge supporter of AARP? Love their magazines, their monthly newspapers, their daily emails, the sister group, that's a black group for women, the Ethel group, the girlfriend group, they got all kinds of groups, right? And I'm pretty much all things AARP. I found that they work to keep those of us 50 and older informed about life. Every aspect of aging by keeping us informed on trends, social security, finances, healthy living, you name it, AARP has that in their magazines.
All right.
So I want you to hang on to that information because it's very important to my story. So let me see. We were talking about surfing and dating on the internet, right? So as a sidebar, I prayed to God to send me a companion. I said, God, I want somebody who likes football because as you get older, you like to watch sports. So I'm into college football particularly. Basketball, particularly women's basketball because I've got a granddaughter that plays at Chicago State. Go to dinner sometimes, maybe sit on the couch and hang out, maybe even hold hands.
Thanks.
Well, let me tell you, God's got jokes. He could be quite funny sometimes. He sent me a companion in the form of my 62-year-old brother. Really, God? That's my companion? Seriously? I love my brother, but I wanted a companion. I wanted someone to date. So, in pursuit of companionship, the first people I matched with was a fellow I went to high school with. Sent him a message. He didn't respond for 6 months. Was it my breath? Was it something I said? Was it my afro? Was it that was fat? Was it my false teeth that I don't have? You know, what was it? So, hey, beautiful lady, can I borrow your wallet? I got a hit. I got a hit on the dateline. Yes, nice looking guy. He says he was an engineer, has a son, works in Northern Illinois. No need to be suspicious, right? He's from Illinois. Joe and I started communicating via the app. And for safety reasons, I got an email from the app company, be careful, this guy may be a scammer, blah, 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 blah. You know, that's what. So we'd have late evening conversations. And then the garbage love begins. I'm coming to see you. I got excited. But I can't come this month because I've been summoned overseas. And I can either go to Europe or I can go to Johannesburg, right? I got a job. So he tells me that he's going to do both jobs and he's going to go to Europe first, then he's going to South Africa in 6 weeks. So he continues to communicate. We do Skype and he Skypes me and I get to see the background of South Africa, blah, 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 blah. Remember I told you about those AARP magazines and the newsletters? Well, as I'm developing this relationship with my new friend, several articles surface and I start reading them and it reminds me, be careful, don't do this because there are people that get scammed and they've lost thousands and thousands of dollars, right? Not old Candice Trees. She's smarter than that. Now, these articles tell you to protect your investments, protect your heart, and to protect you. I was incredibly careful about what I shared, knowing the lurkings and the dangers of using dating sites. So fast forward, Joe's in Johannesburg, Skypes, does all those good things. Then I receive a text. You're not going to believe this. I was robbed, we were robbed at gunpoint. Driver was shot. I need some help. What? Again, thank goodness I'm a reader because I just knew what was coming next. Sure enough, first thing he wanted was, you guessed it, some cash. Sir, I'm sorry, I cannot accommodate you today. And he begged several times, and when that did not work, he asked if I could go to the nearest Walmart. And I'm thinking, how's this joker know that I live down the street from the Walmart out north, right? He says, can you purchase several phone cards and email them to me? Excuse me, sir, not doing that either. GTF off my email and out of my life. So much for Joe, kicked him to the curb. Moving on, the next joker got a little bit slicker. He said he was an investment banker. He lived in Leavenworth, Kansas. Now y'all know where Leavenworth, Kansas is? Do you know what's in Leavenworth, Kansas? For you all that don't know, Leavenworth, Kansas is where the federal prison is. He said he worked in Houston and that he was headed to London. So we went back and forth and so forth and so on, lots of emails. Then I get an email one day saying, my mother is ill in Lyons, France. I think I said that right, for those of us who are American, Lyons, France, okay? So, he was summoned to go to France to see about his mother. And, so you know what happened then. You know what's coming next, right? Remember those AARP articles I told you about? I had read about the women that have been scorned in search of love. Some of them had adult children, and remember there's a lot of them that don't have any children, and they get their money taken, and there's nobody there to help them, and they try to go, and there's just nothing that can happen. Wasn't gonna happen to catch streets. I got 3 daughters. I got brothers and sisters, and all that good stuff not gonna happen to me, right? Right. So, anyway, sometimes these scammers, just to give you a little back information, are in foreign countries. They use stock photos, or they go out on the internet and find photos. Be careful about Facebook. You never know, they'll steal your pictures. And I read once where sometimes there are young people that are captive, and they have them doing these kinds of things, right? Posing as men or women on the internet in search of love. Because fellas out there, it just isn't women that get scammed. The fellas get scammed too, because y'all got money in your bank accounts. So, any rate, moving on. Get to moving? Okay, Liz, I'm moving. I know it's late. I mean to tell you, every fella I matched with had a scheme, story, or needed my wallet. It was always, hey, beautiful, and they would also drop off the dating site and direct me to WhatsApp and whatever place else, Skype and those types of things. So one of my other favorites was Tom. He said he was from St. Louis, and he owned a construction company and so forth, and we had this long relationship that we talked and did some things with, right? And so one day he said that he had to take a business trip to Belize. And he was supposedly doing a construction project, building a huge hospital, showed me the pictures and all that good stuff. This joker asked for $10,000. Who the hell did he think I was? I mean, really, $10,000 me? Can I borrow your wallet? I'll pay you back. You know what? These jokers think I had coffee cans of money in my backyard, and I was willingly going to give it to them. Not happening, fella, not happening. He was again confused. My favorite one was Billy. There were 2 of them. One was named Captain Billy Harrison, and the other one's name was Hillary Billy Harrison. My sweet Billy. So, at any rate, the one who got me was Hillary Billy Harrison. He was the best and the sweetest talker of them all. He supposedly lived in Peoria and had a business, and he'd call daily and was quite charming. And it was always, hey, beautiful, and hey, Billy, my sweet Billy, what's up, blah, blah, blah. Well, how was your day? Would you send me pictures? We can communicate many times and what have you. So he was off to Beijing because he had to do some business in Beijing. Shared his location with me. Oh yeah, we went from Peoria to O'Hara to India to Beijing. This was a nice trip. We got there. So he told me one day, he said, your kids are gonna love me. I'm gonna be their dad and the best grandpa to our grandkids. Stop it there, sir. You've just gone a little too far. Then it happened. I'm stuck in Beijing. My housekeeper needs some money, hasn't been paid. My workers need to get paid. My credit card is not working, and I'm thinking, what the hell are you talking about? The credit card's not working. There's places all over China, you know, they created plastic. They know all about it. So he said to me, hey, beautiful lady, can I borrow your wallet? I only need $10,000, but I want to pay you back. I will pay you back. And after many, many phone calls, and I said, I really don't have that kind of money. He said, can you send me something? I said, well, I guess I can. And foolish me, Candice Trees, sent $2,000. I was scammed, and I knew the minute that I sent the money that I had been scammed. And my heart took over my good sense. And I knew it was a mistake, and I knew I would never see those funds again. But God took care of me, and that chump will get his. And we continued to talk, and he asked me again for some more money. And I finally sent him an email, and I said, I don't know you, I've never met you, and I'm not your cash cow. I don't know why I sent you money in the first place. Well, looking back in hindsight, my dad would have said, you fell for the old okie dokie. I did, but let me also tell you, loneliness can be a sign of weakness. Check on your single friends, especially the older ones, because I never thought I would be a victim. I was asked one time, I did an article not long ago, they said, why didn't you contact law enforcement? Well, these guys are good. I'm embarrassed. I was foolish. I did not want them to see the racy emails, because I sent some racy emails, and Liz Grant over here said that she was going to auction them off. Girl, I got them with me, and you can have them, okay? Because I'm not really embarrassed, because I said all those things that your mom tells you not to say. So I'm embarrassed that me, myself, and I fell victim to a scammer as I was in search of John Shreves, who was dead and he was not coming back. Nor would I want him to come back. Okay, I wouldn't want him to come back. We had a great marriage, we had a great love story, and I just can't repeat what we had. We can't do it again. So I said to myself that I didn't need companionship that bad. I really am a beautiful lady. And no, sir, you can't borrow my wallet. And I have many things and many people to take care of with my money. Get to stepping, Billy. I hope you catch a ride back to the States. You're a beautiful lady, Candice Trees.
God bless her. Would the AARP please hire this woman? I've never heard a better ad for AARP in my life. All right, thank you, Candice's son. Thanks for participating. All right, thanks for hanging out with us tonight. Thank you, everyone, for hanging in there. All right, now let me tell you, she told her story about money, I'll tell mine about being poor. So anyway, sorry, it's a long night. All right. Growing up, the worst kept secret in my small town in southern Illinois was that we were poor. We lived in the housing projects, relied on welfare, and I had a father in prison. But when you're a kid, you don't realize what others know about your life until they make sure you do. At 12, after my mom broke up with another exciting boyfriend, we had to move to the projects in the town over because ours were already full. I already knew the content of my classes, and the girls at the school, well, they hated me. I mean, really despised me. I should have known something was off
when they invited me to a sleepover and said, bring your diary. Well, it was the 90s and everyone had a diary, so I brought it along. That night while I was sleeping, they stole my diary, and in it, my biggest secret, my dad was in prison. Monday morning, I arrived at school to find a sign on my locker. Lizard the jailbird, it said. The kids were gathered around it, and there was a picture of a lizard drawn in prison cells. Everyone was staring. I was mortified, ashamed, and exposed. But the truth was, those kids, they didn't really even know the half of it. My dad wasn't really just a jailbird. He was an escaped jailbird on the run from the cops. Not kidding, true story. When I was in 3rd grade, he had broken loose from a prison chain gang, knocked down a hornet's nest, and had been on the run, living in Alaska for years. Eventually, he was captured and served out the rest of his prison term. What also those kids didn't know is that poverty had a major imprint on my family. My mom, she worked at the nursing home, sometimes 2 jobs. She always had boyfriends in and out. We moved constantly, mostly between rundown houses and housing projects. All my clothes came from rummage cells. And my classmates, knowing that, especially the girls that were, let's admit it, jealous, liked to point out I was wearing their hand-me-downs. We got free health care, free lunches, free coats, Christmas gifts from strangers, and food pantry donations. But the worst part for a teenage girl, our phone was constantly disconnected. When I was a senior in high school, I was stressed about college because of expense. I'd gotten into a dream school and was constantly waiting on the scholarship check to arrive to pay for the housing deposit. Every day, I'd get home from school, I'd run to the mailbox, and the check was never there. This went on for several weeks. Eventually, I called the issuer of the checks to find out my mom had cashed and spent all of my scholarship money. I was unable to go to the school of my choice, but I ended up on a better path. Years ago, my high school gave me the honor of called the Distinguished Graduate. I was the first student they were going to ever give this honor to, and I was invited to give the commencement address at my high school. As I was practicing the speech with my brother, my mom overheard the speech. She came in, she said, "Elizabeth K., you cannot tell that speech. Do not talk about this stuff publicly. It will embarrass our family." Just like right now, if my mom knew I was giving this speech right now, she would burn the building down. I told her, "Mom, we have nothing to be ashamed of. We should share this story. It would help someone." But I gave the speech, and you guys can figure out what happened afterwards. Lots of people came up to me and said they could identify. Growing up poor taught me some lessons that have today became my core values. I want to share a few of those with you tonight. The silver lining, poverty can have its perks. You can laugh at that, but I got to go to Head Start when I was 4 years old, and I learned how to read at 4. And that was something no one else could do in my kindergarten class. So while they were like learning, I was reading everything, like stacks of books. I would drive my teachers crazy with it. That desire to read led to me loving learning, loved education. And today, as part of my job, I get to lobby to actually make sure that Head Start stays open for the kids today. Thank you. The other thing I was able to learn is forgiveness. Yes, you heard the scholarship story about my mom, but my mom at that time was doing the best that she could with the tools that she had available. My mom was uneducated. She was a single mom. She was poor, but she always made sure we had food and clothes, even if they're from rummage sales, but vintage is cool now, so they would be cool today. And we always had a small surprise on Fridays when she got paid. It was always on our bed. And she loved me the way that she could. Even my father, I ended up meeting him right before he passed away. When I met him, this very strong feeling of forgiveness overcame me. And my dad said this to me: "I made your life by not being in your life." I saved you from me. And I understood right away what he meant. He said, I would have added so much drama and chaos to your life. And I watched you from afar. I knew you would be successful, and I knew that God would always take care of you. My dad died 2 days later and was at peace. The next thing I use in my life is this saying called service is the secret. I'm 19 years sober, and I'll take a round of applause.
I just want to make sure you guys are still awake. It's a long night.
And one of the things that is spoken is that what you do today is what will keep you sober for today. But that can apply to all kinds of things. There's never been a time in my life where generosity, even tonight, these generous stories of vulnerability that are shared with us. And I really think it's our job as human beings to share that kind of generosity with other people. And speaking of people, I need people. One of the things I really do when I'm having a bad day, did anyone play Farmer in the Dell? Yeah, like remember the cheese, like the cheese stood alone? Anyway, so I sometimes make myself the cheese where I'm in the middle of a circle, and when I'm having a really bad day, I think of myself in the middle of the circle, and I think of all of the people that I love one by one looking at me. I think of my grandparents that passed away. I think of my mom, my brother, my husband, our sons, my best friends, my colleagues, people I've met along the way, special teachers, mentors, even my dad. Sometimes I think of people that want to meet me, like Bradley Cooper or John Hamm. And that makes me happy too. Just kidding, but honestly, you all have a circle of love. Think of your circle when you're struggling with a bad day. I promise it helps. Lastly, I believe that God is always doing for me what I cannot do for myself. That is true. The one thing I know is that God has a plan for all of our lives. And I don't always know what it is. And I think about my life and where I am today. I never knew what it was, but I knew it was going to be great. I would have never thought that one day I would get to do my actual dream job, caring for issues and priorities that are important to me personally. I would be able to defend government resources that were given to me so freely, like child advocacy centers. I'm their lobbyist. That'll take care of it. Thank you. All of those things have made it very possible for me to share about how poverty has made my life possible. I want to leave you with this. Every single moment of your life, think about every single good and bad, your grandpa, your story of loss coming out, your story in the elevator. I won't go through locker room. I could go through that one. But anyway, I could go through all the stories. But all of those stories, every single piece, has led us to this very single moment in our lives. Yours too. And as I look around, I have to tell you one thing. This very moment is amazing. Thank you so much.
And I know there's not introductions. But I don't follow the rules anyway.
So let me just tell you, we are very, very lucky in the Springfield community to have a wonderful senator.
Amen. She literally, we have saved the best for last.
Doris Turner does more for this community than any other elected official in history. But let me tell you, she has a true heart of gold. Ladies and gentlemen, Doris Turner.
In my younger years, before I learned black people aren't supposed to dream, I wanted to be a Raylette and say, drowned in my own tears, or talking about, or Marjorie Hendricks and grind all up against the mic and scream, baby, 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 night and day, night and day. Then as I grew and matured, I became more sensible and decided I would settle down and just become a sweet inspiration. Merriam-Webster's dictionary defines the word foundation as a basis such as a tenet, principle, or axiom upon which something stands or is supported, or the underlying base of support. So what is the foundation upon which your life is built? What makes us who and what we are or are becoming? Everyone has a backstory, and our backstory matters because it serves as our launching pad into life. It is our backstories that form us and compel us to push forward when others are screaming at us, stop, quit. This dream is not for you. This dream is not for someone of your color, your gender, your age group, your sexual orientation, and the exceptions go on and on and on. It can be so extremely exhausting. My backstory, my foundation is my family. My parents always instilled both the power and the love of family, and I have worked extremely, extremely hard to pass that along to my children, and I am exceptionally proud to see them passing it on to their children. It sounds very simplistic. However, I will tell you it is anything but. I can still hear my mother's voice each and every day, providing those words of wisdom and encouragement. My kids often say, you sound just like Granny, and it's usually when I'm saying something that they know is right, but they don't want to hear it. But I take that as high praise. There is tremendous power in words. They can harm, support, celebrate, empower, or antagonize. As a child, I was always comforted by my mother's words. For some unknown reason, I always wanted to be liked and everyone's friend. And I would get very upset when it appeared even one person was not going along with my program. My mother was the one who told me that I need to have thicker skin. She would say, although I love you, not everyone is going to like or appreciate you, and that is more a reflection of them than you. I thought she wanted me to just ignore small words from little kids that sometimes hurt my feelings, but now I know that she needed me to be prepared to do something bigger and something greater. Like Maya Angelou, my mother was trying to tell me, Doris Jean, if you are always trying to be normal, you will never know how amazing you can be. Girl, you may not be able to control all the events that happen to you, but you can decide not to be reduced by them. The foundation of my mother's words guided me to ignore the small stuff and to stay diligent and focused so that I could prepare for those greater things. The little girl in me needed to live out loud in celebration of the short time frame of childhood and know that during childhood, all children had the right to be loved, protected, and most of all, happy. And that strategic reply should be applied in response to opposition that screams no to everything that I know deserves a yes. Early childhood education, health care, pay equity for women and educators, and workforce pathways for diverse populations. Nikki Giovanni said, if we don't like the world we're living in, change it. And if we can't change it, we change ourselves. I am no Marjorie Hendricks, and I promise you do not want to hear me grinding out any notes. You know, and people don't mind telling you that. I went to church Sunday and I was a little bit late. So it was Men's Day, so I'm walking in and the men were all gathered in the back waiting to, process up to take their place in the choir loft. And I'm just trying to be nice and welcoming, and I said, hey, y'all want me to come and sing with y'all? And my birthday buddy, Jack, says to me, Sister Doris, now ain't your time. And everybody else just looked like, yeah, now ain't your time. I'm telling you, if I struck a note, that would be the quickest and easiest way to clear the room. My backstory compelled me to choose public service. Along the way, I have learned that my skin did not need to be so thick, but the world that I lived in needed to be more kind, fair, and welcoming. However, as the first Black woman to lead a political party in the state of Illinois, Democratic floor leader during my tenure on the Sangamon County Board, Springfield Alderwoman who served as the first female and first Black mayor pro tem, and as the first Black Illinois state senator to represent the 48th district, I have developed a thicker skin. Perhaps out of self-preservation for me and others. And some of y'all, as the preacher says, y'all gonna get that on the way home. Yeah, for real. Thicker skin allows me to be stronger and more mature in ensuring a successful mission. That mission being leaving my community better than how I found it. This thicker skin is also one that is part of my self-care regimen. It allows me to be calm in the midst of a storm and fight off the slings and arrows of those who come in anger or hatred. A regimen that cares for me, the little girl that had dreams and aspirations, and all the little boys and girls that have little to no voice, that use me to speak on their behalf as I show them each and every day that all things are possible if you only believe it to be so. If I am truly honest, I do not believe that I chose public service. I believe it chose me. My family, my neighbors, my ward, my county, and Illinois' 48th district have given me the privilege of living out loud with that little girl who still speaks to me with every piece of legislation that I write and defend, every speech or presentation that I give, and with every vote that I have ever received or have cast. That little girl holds my feet to the fire, and she asks me every day, is there more that we can do for those who are hurting, those who are invisible, those who are suffering injustices simply because they have been denied the right to live out loud as they were created to do. This is my backstory. My backstory matters, and so does yours and everyone else's. I know that there are people who are listening right now that also have a little person living inside them, weeping for an opportunity to be seen and heard. To them, I say, your story matters and your dreams matter to the universe. Your disappointments, failures, successes, and triumphs are your foundation. And you are free to build on your foundation, or if necessary, deconstruct it and start over today and each and every day. Whatever you do, do not ignore that little person living inside you who may have a nugget of wisdom to help you take the next step on your journey. I consider myself to be a servant leader, leading beside others who understood that I did not need them to walk in front of me because I might not have been able to follow their leadership style. I appreciate the people who have held me accountable throughout my journey, who did not walk behind me because they were not always sure of the path that I was going to take. But most of all, I appreciate the people who have walked beside me, fought beside me, and who have chosen to lead beside me as a friend and confidant. As I began, I now return you to the sage, Nikki Giovanni, whose words and energy are and have always been the heartbeat of my life. I leave you in the inviting hands of Miss Nikki. In my younger years, before I learned Black people aren't supposed to dream.
Let's give a round of applause for all of our women tonight. Amazing women, amazing stories, and we've had an amazing audience. I know you all have been touched by this because I've seen the emotion from way back here, and we are so grateful that you've joined us tonight, and grateful to all of these women for sharing their stories and their lives and their secrets with us, and we thank everyone for being part of this.